Hey everybody, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining us again for another Facebook Live Ask Us Anything with DiGiCo. We have another couple of special guests that you're going to really enjoy hearing from here in a little bit. But first, the usual disclaimers as everybody's getting on board. This is a Facebook Live Ask Us Anything. This is actually live, so if, all the consumer laptops and Skype and all the other stuff that we're using, if it all falls apart, you're going to lose us. We are going to try our best to come back in the same place. If we can't, just jump back on the Facebook page. We'll jump on to finish this thing out. Let's see here. Let's do a couple of intros of our crew first. Helping me with the interviews and fielding questions from you guys is Matt Larson. Matt, how you doing?
Very good, everybody. Thank you for showing up today.
Fantastic. Our producer, Kyle, manning everything. Kyle, how you doing? Kyle's got a new desk, which I know he's excited about. So chat about that later. All right. Let's see here. Now, remember, this isn't Ask Us Anything, so we want your questions. So remember, jump in the comments section, add your questions to our two special guests here, and I'll just start with their intros a little bit here. The first things first, I'd like to introduce Chad Olech. Chad has been a touring front of house engineer since 1999 and then started as a production manager shortly after that in 2000. He has worked from everything from the smallest of clubs to the largest festivals and stadiums, and of course, everything in between. Some of his artists include Fall Out Boy, Shinedown, Deftones, Quicksand, Joe Jonas, Demi Lovato, Chevelle, Alice in Chains, Thin Lizzy, P.O.D, many others. Chad Olech, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. I do think there's another title, Meme King. Is that's a thing, right? Is that what people call you?
So I've been told.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, if you're just kind of the aimless scroller on Facebook, I would highly recommend following Chad. Not if you're easily offended, probably not though.
Parental supervision advised.
Yeah, definitely. But it'll definitely brighten your day, and you'll be the guy like me leaning over to my wife half the time and be like, "This is hilarious. You have to see this." Anyway, fantastic ones. That other voice you heard in the background is ZITO. While we do know his real name, we're not legally allowed to share it, so we're just going to call him ZITO. 21 years in the audio industry, so if you're good at math, that is exactly the same time as Chad started. He has been doing front of house and also production managing. Some of the artists that he has worked with include OneRepublic, Backstreet Boys, McGraw Faith Hill, Josh Groban, SIA, Ariana Grande, and I threw it in because apparently it got left off, but Superchick was also one that...
The pinnacle of my career.
Yes, absolutely. ZITO, thank you so much for joining us, my friend. How are you doing today?
I am terrific. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So I really appreciate you guys being here. I know, honestly, you probably didn't have much else to do, but honestly, thank you for making the time for us. I know we could probably sit here and bemoan everything that's happened to our industry and just where we're at with the current state of things, but rather than focus on that side of things, I thought it would be great to spend some time and just talk about like your careers, at the time you've spent, the people you've met along the way, some of those great stories, anything we can do to just help share that knowledge with the next generation of engineer as they're getting started, maybe some encouragement there and maybe some advice along the way. So starting that off, Chad, would you just take us through kind of how you got started in the industry? What led you to where you are today?
I like to call it poor career choices and not enough schooling. But honestly, I started out working in clubs as just a front of house guy in clubs. Moved into the management side of clubs a little bit, and then was working for a local Boston artist called Knock, and they opened up for a band called Orange 9mm, who had just released their front of house guy. I kind of helped them out that day a little bit, and 3 days later, I got a call from the drummer asking if I wanted to hop in a van and start heading around the country.
Fantastic. Now, you didn't just start being the front of house guy at a club, though. How did you actually get into audio?
Oh, I was a total AV nerd in high school. So okay. I started out doing all that stuff in high school, and then ended up going to school, a now defunct college out in Los Angeles called the University of Sound Arts. Okay. And got into studio stuff. And one day I was playing in a band, and not well, but playing in a band. And we were playing this crappy little dive bar in Massachusetts. The front of house guy was completely wasted. So for the other acts, I said, hey, I've done some studio stuff. This can't be any different. And hopped behind the console and ran sound for a couple of the opening or other acts. I don't remember the order of bands. And then said, hey, why don't you touch these knobs for my band and we'll be good.
Awesome. I just see one of our first questions, more of a comment from Steve Nyan. I can vouch for Chad's AV nerdiness in high school.
Yes, he can.
So fantastic. You got to love friends in this industry. There's just nothing quite like it. Awesome. Thanks, Chad. I appreciate that. ZITO, maybe your turn. How'd you get into all this?
I went to school as a music major about over 20 years ago now, and had a lot of very talented friends. And I remember walking down the hall one day, very much in my head, just thinking about what I was going to do. And I walked past, one of the practice rooms, and somebody was playing piano, and I was like, shit, they're good. And then I heard somebody else playing guitar in another room, and I heard somebody practicing sax and all the things that I played. And I was like, man, every one of these people are better than me. And I was like, this is going to be a long, hard road. And so I kind of was like, I want to find a different path. And I was playing in a band at the time, and we were opening for another band in the Chicago area. And I told him, I can do sound. I really couldn't do sound, but I told him I could. And like, man, it's so cool. Like our brother, he's our sound guy's a bass player's brother, and he like can't go on the road with us and stuff. So can you go out with us this weekend? And I was like, yeah. And so I went into the green room and told the band I was breaking us up, and I was going on the road with the other band. And that was the beginning of it. Story. But actually, I do have a little side. I'll tell an embarrassing story just to start this. The guitar player said to me at the time, he goes, hey man, do you have like any of your own gear and stuff? I was like, yeah, of course. He goes, why? Because I know like every sound guy has their own like compressors. It's part of their sound that they like to have. And you can bring whatever you want. I was like, yeah, totally cool. I had no compressors, and nor did I even know what a compressor did. And so I went to Guitar Center and went back, and I said, I need a good compressor. And the guy was like, well, here, I'll sell you these DBX 266 XLs. It's two compressors in one with a gate, and you can patch it all in, and I'll give you a rack. And so I bought 6 channels of compression and all of the insert cables and a rack and everything. And I went with the band on tour, and I had no clue what compression did. None whatsoever. And I have a flashback every now and then when I think about going into these clubs and making the poor house sound guy patch my rack of 266 XLs in. Who knows? What they were unpatching. Like they could have had pure gold in there, right? And 1176 or whatever. And I was making them unpatch it for 266, telling them, it's part of my sound. XL. Yep.
Yeah.
I might have had the units in bypass. I just made the light do shit. Honestly, I had no idea until many years later how to wrap my head around what compression was. And so that was a very embarrassing moment. And I've often thought about what those people had to think I was the biggest idiot.
Fake it till you make it.
You look good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Now, I think if we're probably all honest, we probably have some sort of story like that at some point along the way. That is awesome, though, ZITO. Thanks. Well, this is going to be a question for both of you because you both have experience, obviously, as being front of house engineers, but also as production managing. I know a lot of you, or actually both of you, have done that simultaneously. Sometimes leaving front house mixing for production managing depends on the artist and the tour, I know. But so first thing first, how do you approach working with a new artist? And let's just put the hat on first as a front of house engineer, because I know probably a lot of the people out there are going to be in that, just looking at it from that perspective. And then if you could come back to it and just if there's anything different when approaching it as a production manager as well. Chad, you want to start us off?
Sure. So musically, I'll once I get hired, and sometimes even before I'm hired, I'll dive into the artist's catalog and go on a Setlist FM. For me is a great resource to see what they've played live and how often they play certain songs to get an idea of what songs I'll have to focus on more than others. And then I'll try and have a discussion with with the artist if possible, if not at least with management, about what their vision is. I mean, some artists want as close to a carbon copy of the record as they can get. And I've had other artists, like I've worked for a kind of pop artist at one point who's like, no, I want a full on almost metal, metal mix, big drums, big guitars. I was like, to each his own. If that's what they want, then that's what I'm going to try and produce for them. Yeah. So I go through that, sit in rehearsals for as long as they'll allow. In this day and age, I don't know. I mean, I'm lucky to get a week usually to try and sort things out, which, for me can be plenty of time as long as I can record and do virtual playbacks and stuff when the artist isn't there. Go through that, try and get someone to kind of at least half sign off on the mix and say that they don't hate it, and then just go into the first show. And production wise, the way I look at it is I'm the mouthpiece for the crew, and I'm also there to make sure that the artist's vision is as represented as it possibly can be, given the constraints of a venue and time and money.
Nice. Okay. ZITO, will you want to take a turn at that?
Yeah, man. As far as musically speaking and mixing, I try to inundate myself with the music, get familiar with it. So, because I've ever found that the artist kind of will test you out a little bit. They'll ask you about something or throw something out there, and if you can have a conversation with them about an effect that was on it or how something was mixed or whatever, it kind of gives you a little bit of a leg up. I also found that having my music experience coming from that background and having the music major knowledge allows me to have conversations with the artist. It sort of bridges the gap between the musician that lives in that space and the technical aspect of mixing. And a lot of times that has been super beneficial for me, being able to have a conversation with an artist about, especially when you're talking about things like tone or levels or how you're maybe EQing something. You can have a conversation about what they're trying to achieve and use it in a language that they understand or relate to, and be like, well, I know you're trying to make it sound like this, but you're actually fighting against yourself, because this is living in this range and this is living in this range, and so everything's working here, and it would be better if we kind of move this over here and we kind of bring this down or maybe round out the sound here, and do kind of take a different approach to it. And they've always given me a wide berth to sort of be able to do that, as long as you can present the results that they're looking for at the end of the day.
Very nice. And then as far as being a production manager, how do you approach that portion of the gig?
I try to gather as much information about the artist as I can, especially the institutional knowledge. There's, coming into work with a new artist, you're trying to figure out how they operate, who makes the decisions, who's the one that's going to make the calls, who's the person that's really involved with it. So I try to get into that right away, get the institutional knowledge from the backline guys, any existing crews, so I can sort of start piecing things together. At the same time, I'm working in the background, taking my kind of procedures of how I approach a tour and how I set up a tour, and start plugging in the logistics of it, start organizing my files and getting everything in a place so that I can have conversations with the band about whatever it may be, routing and things that they're trying to do as far as the production of the show. And so I kind of do those two things at the same time. And I find that once those dialogues start, they're quick to throw you questions and curveballs, and you want to be prepared with an answer. So I try to lay that framework early on in the tour, so I kind of know what's coming at me.
Okay. So for those who are new to the industry, or maybe don't come to it from the touring side, what is a production manager?
A juggler, a facilitator of nonsense and dreams.
The fire putter outer.
Yeah, exactly. I try to just keep the ship on the tracks. We're responsible ultimately, end of the day, for everything that takes place for the show, everything as it relates to the actual musical performance, all the technical details, and moving the crew to and from. And so, I try to work with establish a strong team and work with them to pull the show off every day, and to work ahead to there's always going to be curveballs. There's always going to be things that you don't expect. And so I'm constantly thinking ahead, working ahead, letting the guys on the floor, letting my crew facilitate the day-to-day things so that I can be looking at the big picture, and that I can also then be free to deal with issues as they pop up, to come and make decisions. You ultimately are responsible. It's your name on the line, and the buck has to stop with you. You've got to be the decision maker. And so you need to allow yourself to be in a position to be able to make a call, to work with your team, to trust what they have to say, and to make the decision. A lot of times that's really what it is. It's got to move to some point, and that's going to end with you. Or maybe you gather the information, present it to the others. Here's the situation today. Fire marshal isn't letting us shoot. How do you want to do this? We can do these effects, or we can scrap the whole thing altogether. Is it better to have some or none? It's an issue with the flames, or we can do this. And so you're gathering that all together, and then, making the decision with the artist, or sometimes you make the decision if the artist trusts you to do that.
Okay. Well, thanks. Chad, you have obviously spent time both front of house mixing and production managing. Knowing what production managing is and what front of house mixing is, how do you balance those? And what does that look like?
I've been very blessed that I can usually pick my own team for my office staff and my stage manager, and being able to do that makes me able to do both jobs on a tour the size of, say, Fall Out Boy. Our last tour was 12 or 13 semis, which isn't, it's not a massive tour, but it's a really good sized tour. Yeah. And without an amazing stage manager and office staff, there's absolutely no way I could do both jobs. I know that I don't have to worry so much about the stage side of things. I go out, make sure everything's cool, but I'm sure, I know that my stage manager will call me if there's a problem that needs to be addressed that he can't sort out. And likewise, having a great systems engineer on the audio side of things, so that I don't have to worry about, is the PA set up properly? Is it, has it been timed right? I just know that I can go out and do my job.
Awesome. Well, thanks. Let's see here. I had a question that, there's an important question that came through, but we're going to make sure Dustin waits just a minute to get his answered there. So ZITO, you actually made the transition and moved away from front of house mixing to production managing. Why did you ultimately make that decision?
Well, I'm a control freak. I have to have ultimate control over my destiny. The reality was, for me, I reached a point where I felt like I couldn't put 100% into both, and I felt like I was doing a above average job, and I didn't want to just do an above average job. I wanted to excel. And there wasn't enough hours in the day. I would be in the morning in the office, and my system engineer would get everything set up. I'd go out there, I'd do a line check, and then I'd be back in the office, and I'd be there until the show, and then I'd go out and mix, and then I'd go back and be in the office again. And I was busy all the time, and I had a list of things that I couldn't get to. Feel like I could stay on top of. There's always a punch list of things I wanted to work on with the mix that I needed to be able to go out and spend a half hour, an hour. And I found it harder and harder as the tours got bigger to be able to do that. So I had to make a decision between one or the other, and I lamented. It was very, very hard for me to decide because I love doing both of them, but ultimately decided that I wanted to focus on doing production. I guess the way that I saw it, there's been some shifts in the industry as far as how engineers are. And I kept seeing the same big gigs go to the same guys, and the money going up for them, and the weekly rates going up. And then everything else started getting shoved down, and the offers were less and less for just doing that. And I thought, well, I was a little bit tired of that game. So I chose to move into production. There's only, as Chad knows, there's probably only a few dozen of us, 50 in the world that can do large arena tours. And at the end of the day, that I thought it was an easier path for me to be able to sort of excel at.
Awesome. That's really good. Chad, do you have anything? I mean, because you're still juggling both of those, right? Or does it depend on the tour for you?
It slightly depends on the tour. As a very loose rule. I try not to take a tour that I'm not mixing on, because for me that is the fun part of the day. That part to me isn't work. That's I hate to use the term art because it's such a overly used term for what we tend to do.
The art of mixing.
Yeah, but it's the truly enjoyable part of the day. I really love production managing as well, but it's it's very rare that when I'm mixing something I come across something that really frustrates me, where production wise, you could have a promoter rep, a local runner, one of your own backline guys or one of your own crew guys that just totally infuriates you and can kind of blow your day.
Backline guys, you can say it.
I mentioned backline a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we got to be honest here. This is definitely a safe space. So Chad, while I'm poking your brain, hunting for gigs. What does that look like when you're taking this approach? I mean, you said obviously you want to take a gig where you can mix as well, but what does that look like when you're trying to find a new artist or looking for a new gig to work on, or probably more likely fill in some time, right? Between maybe your main artist is taking a break or something.
So I mean, I basically call and email every friend I have in the business. Like I'll hit up ZITO and hit up, pretty much anybody I know. I mean, I'm part of Bob Davis's list for the last for the last 20 something years, almost 21 years. I think I joined his list in 99. I'm not too proud to shoot out an email saying, "Hey, I'm currently not working. Who's got something?" And I'll take a gig that's not mixing if it's the right fit. Like I went out and did my first tour managing only job ever in my life. I've never just tour managed an artist, and I don't even tour manage. I mean, that was my first tour management gig in like 9 years. But I went out and did Jason Bonham as just the tour manager, and it ended up being a lot of fun.
Awesome.
So basically I just network, hit up everybody.
So when you were just the tour manager, did you walk in and just start busting the production manager's balls about everything?
I would have, but I was also the production manager.
Good stuff. So it's back to the backline guy. I get it. So as far as time between tours, what do you guys do does coronavirus aside, what do you do in a typical, hey, you got some downtime, you got, a month or two between things that are scheduled, a couple of weeks. What's your approach, Chad? What do you take to that?
I mean, if it's a couple of weeks between tours or a month or whatever between tours, I'm usually still working on advancing the next tour. Okay. I'm doing it from home, but I'm still working. Normally, I come home, I hang out with my wife and daughter. Depending on the season, I'll go play golf or go camping, do something outside. If it's wintertime, just hang out around home, try and catch up with friends that I haven't been able to see because I've been on the road. And really, that's it. I live a pretty quiet lifestyle at home.
So I mean, you're saying embrace that time. Don't run around like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to fill it with every possible gig. Just spend the time with your family and those that you love. And
yeah, I mean, if something falls into my life, if I have, say, 2 months off and something falls into my lap and I can fit it in, then maybe I'd consider it. If I thought it was going to be fun. At that point, I'm doing it for enjoyment, not necessarily for fun. I mean, obviously, I'll make money doing it, but if I'm doing something like that, I want to do it because I want to do it, not because I have to do it for the money.
Yeah. ZITO, what about you? How do you fill your downtime?
Work. I have historically done work for multiple artists at the same time, and jumping between days off to fly in here, go there, do this, do that. I mean, I've been doing over 300 days a year for the last 5 years, so I don't have a lot of time off, and I don't rest well. And I should say I always feel like a train. It takes me a long time to shut down, and I get home and I'm in instant project mode. I just cannot relax. It's project after project, fix this, work on that. The minute I walk in the house, I'm like, oh, that light bulb's out. Oh, look, did I just hear the door squeak? And so I definitely, that's how I stay busy. But I don't necessarily see it as work. I love what I do, and so I love being on the road. I love working, but I do cook. So we do a lot of that at the house, and I cycle a lot. I cycle on the road on days off, and I cycle here in Nashville. So that is one thing that I do take advantage of when I'm not gigging.
Yeah, speaking
How long
of
do you cycle for?
Oh, way too long.
All the miles.
Yes, all the miles. I try to go between 100 to 150 miles a week. I cycle 3 days a week, and I cycle anywhere between 40 to 60 miles on average. I've been working really hard the last few years and did my first century about 2 weeks ago, where I did 100 miles in a day, and just to prove to myself that I could do it. And with sore legs and an even sore ass, I accomplished my task, and it was awesome. It was a really great feeling.
I'm very proud of you. That is amazing.
Thanks, man.
So back to the baking thing, though, we did have a question that came in a minute ago from Dustin Muncie. He says the most important question is how many calories is in each of Zito's cinnamon rolls?
Frosted.
They look amazing.
Frosted, they're 560 calories, 398 without frosting.
Nice.
Why would you eat them without frosting? That sounds terrible.
How long would you need to bike in order to burn that many calories?
About an hour. Yeah, I burn about 600 calories an hour.
That's why he did the 100 miles.
It is 100%. I have to taste test, and the reason that I know the calories without the frosting is sometimes as I make adjustments to my dough or whatever, I'll just taste that. So I know all of the calorie counts because I'm a huge advocate of counting calories. I have been working hard for the last 3 years, almost 140 pounds lost. I got another pound and a half to go. I know what goes in and what goes out.
There you go. That is awesome. John Baker actually chimed in with a question as well. He said, would you rather do club tours or stadiums? So why don't you each take that one? Chad, you want to start us off?
Sure. Man, that's hard. They both have plus sides and minus sides. I think I would have to go with the stadium just purely because it's better catering. Yeah. Catering in a club is just going to be hot garbage usually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what about the buyout in the restaurant next door?
The problem with that is I always end up spending 3 times the amount of my buyout to eat there. So although I get a great meal, I go broke doing it. The
$7 club buyout for lunch isn't cutting it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can get a Subway sub and that's about it.
What about you, Zito?
Well, I'm going to go. I'm actually, man, there's some shitty clubs, but there's some really shitty arenas. I'm actually going to go with the club. People ask me what my favorite venue is, and I always say it's the easy ones. To me, there's no glory in hard loading. So stadiums, long pushes, they're hot outside. The dressing rooms suck because there's like 3 rooms that they're not set up like, and most of the stadiums are not set up with lots of dressing rooms like arenas. So there's like 3 locker rooms, and you're sharing this. And if you're support, you're getting a closet here. They're crummy, and you're gonna walk 30 miles a day. Catering is going to be on one side of the venue and production's on the other side, and the dressing room's totally opposite of the stage. And so I'm just over that. There are some pretty crummy clubs as well, but there's some really great ones where the 2 docks and, stage AE in Pittsburgh, 2 docks, stage left, or 3 docks, and it's a 50-foot push to the stage. Awesome. Give me that every day of the week over any stadium.
Well, see, and you pick Stage AE, which has good catering. So
yeah. Well, they do go hand in hand. The catering is a real thing for us chubby kids. I'm
a fat kid. I want my food.
Yeah.
So it's no secret that both of you guys use DiGiCo when you are mixing, or were formerly mixing. Zito. Kevin Cleary asked a question. He said, "What is the reason you chose DiGiCo, and how does that help make your setup easier, if it does?" Zito, I know you were using a different brand for a while. I think we got introduced right around that time you were making the change. But how would you answer that one?
I chose. I was just thinking of a smart ass answer. Oh, wow. Okay. Anyways, I love the desk. I still like the console. I love the routing flexibility of it. I love the fact I'm big on my style of mixings, using a lot of subgroups, and I like groups go into groups and process together, and I kind of take individual things and group them together by sound, and can't do that on other said consoles the same way. So the flexibility is super powerful to it, and I'm a huge advocate of dynamic EQ and multi-band compression, and so having that available on every channel was awesome, was huge for me. Those changed my mixing more than anything else, using and understanding dynamic EQ and multi-band compression when I really started diving into that, and really changed my approach with how I built my mixes with groups. It blew it wide open for me.
Awesome. Chad?
For me, I went from another one of the major manufacturers, and I called my audio provider and said, "Hey, I've had it with these guys. I had a couple little issues that weren't solved to my satisfaction. So I called my provider and said, "Hey, give me the top 6 desks that you have. I know I want to do the SD5, and I knew at the time I wanted to do the new SSL. So I did those plus 4 others. Spent 3 days, 2 days per desk, so about 3 or 4 hours on each desk. And after 3 or 4 hours on each desk, it was the SD5 for me was it, much like what ZITO was saying, it worked really well with the way I do things. And it also, for me, a lot of the desks sound great, it's more your ears and your fingers and making stuff work than sometimes than the equipment. But for me, it laid out the way I like to see things. It set up the way I like to do things. And it just fit with the whole architecture fit with how I like to have things done.
That makes sense. So when was that? How long ago did you switch to DiGiCo?
I was, when was that? 2014.
Okay.
I'd been with Fall Out Boy for just about a year, a little less than a year, and I made the switch between legs.
Very cool.
That was to an SD5, right?
It was, and the SD5 is still my desk of choice currently.
Very cool. So we had a couple of questions come in, actually jumping back to the production managing and front of house coordinating portion of it. This is from Dennis Satria. He was asking, how's the typical show sound check day usually you work? What orders do you typically do? Coordinate about other stuff and then mix front of house for the show. So what's a rundown on your normal day in the life of Chad Olech, who is production managing and front of house mixing a show? What does that look like for you?
So the last full tour, big tour that I did with that, it was 6 a.m. wake up, 6:30 in the venue, 7 a.m. Was starting to chalk the floors with the riggers, start setting up my office with my production coordinator. Usually by about 12:30, 1 o'clock, the PA would be ready to make a little bit of noise. Sound check around 2. Back in the office after sound check. I was very fortunate. My artist didn't sound check very much. It would be like a song, come out in 5 minutes. Back to the office until showtime, advancing shows, solving any kind of logistical issues or any kind of problems that happen to pop up. Have dinner, back out to the show floor. I usually try to roll out like 2 songs before the support band's done. I'll try and roll out. I want to catch part of their show. I like hearing what the room sounds like, relatively full. Even if that engineer and I don't mix in a similar way, by that point, by a few shows in, I'll have a good idea of what he's doing compared to what I'm doing and be able to judge the room based on that and do the show. I always pack up and set up my own front of house console whenever possible. It's just part of what I like to do. So I'll either the systems tech will help or I'll send him away to start breaking down PA or whatever. Get my console packed up. Then it's back in the office for another 2-3 hours. Finally roll out between 1 and 2 in the morning. Get to bed around 2:30 and start all again the next day at 6:30.
That's a glamorous life, Chad.
Life is good.
Well, so ZITO, for you, what is that? What is that similar for you back when you were doing both as well, or?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I've always seen it. If I have a guy in the building as the production manager, I'm in the building. I never pull that whole, I'll stroll in later in the day and let the riggers go in. I'm in when they're in. So I'm up early and before our chalk, walk in the room with the guys, talking over what our execution for the day is, coming up with our game plan, and then letting them run what's happening out on the floor. And then, setting up the office, working on logistics for advancing. You're always working ahead by weeks or months. And so that's the point where, you get in the morning, the emails start coming in for shows that are coming up weeks and months from now. And it stays pretty busy until, sound check, go out, knock it out, back in the office, work up until the show, get that going. And then at the end of the night is a great time to catch up. Things are quiet again. The emails have slowed down for the day. And then you're there until it's late, 12:30, 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning. And they're long days.
Yeah, first in, last out.
Yep.
There you go. So that being said, because that sounds ridiculous, how do you guys stay sane on the road? ZITO, you were mentioning not only do you bike when you're in Nashville and in between gigs, but you mentioned you do that on the road. Is that to help you just clear your mind and not only get some exercise, or what's?
Yeah, the one thing I will say, one of the positives that has come out of moving away from doing the 2 gigs is that I felt like when I was mixing and doing front of house, I was always playing catch up and I didn't have days off. My day off was just spent catching up with stuff that I maybe couldn't get to when I was mixing. I love the show and I love being a production manager when the show is happening. Some artists want you to be out there, but typically I get the show started and then I stay on radio, and that's a 2 hours where I don't have anybody come in my office to bother me, and I can get caught up on stuff, have a clear head, be able to just look over the game plan for the next couple days, make sure that I didn't miss anything. And then on the show day, I take time for on the days off, I take time for myself. I've learned that there's always some big urgent thing, but typically it can wait. There's very few things that can't wait a few minutes for you to take a little time. And so I always have my phone on me and sort of monitor what's happening, but getting out and riding, I love exploring new cities and just, putting the wheels on the road and pedaling. And it's a very mentally calming thing. There's something that switches in your head when you start doing that type of riding where you're going for 2, 3, 4 hours. You can't look at it as I'm going to do 60 miles in 60, 59, 58. It messes with your head. You just think in little segments. I'm going up to this corner and you're just focused on that. And I'm going down to this next turn and you're focused on that. Very relaxing for me mentally, and it helps to keep me sane.
I like that. Chad, what about you? How do you stay sane on the road?
Sleep as much as I can. A day off for me normally starts, if we can get into our rooms early, I'll get in my room. I'll usually take a nap until, 11 or 12. Answer emails first, take a nap. 11 or 12, get up, try and play a round of golf if the weather's acceptable to do that. Try and get dinner early. Like on days off, I usually try and do dinner around 5 or maybe 6. Hang out with a couple of the crew guys for a couple hours, and usually on a day off, I try and usually make it back to bed by about 8 or 9, and then out until lobby call the next morning, which is usually 5:30 or 6.
Very good. Very good. Adrian Gorizon asked ZITO, what kind of bike do you ride?
I ride a specialized road bike. I love specialized. I should think of something really cool to say here, but they're great bikes, and I'm actually about to upgrade. I have one called the Diverge, and am looking to actually sell my motorcycle so that I can get a new bicycle. That's kind of crazy to say, but I get a lot more use out of my bicycle than I do my motorcycle. So yeah, I'm planning on upgrading as soon as I can free up some funds.
Fantastic. Let's see here. This will be for both of you. I think you'll be happy to answer it. Stephen Blake Lawrence asked, thoughts on working on a cruise ship as a sound engineer? Who wants to take that one?
Now or like 4 months ago?
Yeah, right.
I mean, I've never really thought about it. I mean, if the pay was right, it sounds like it could potentially be fun. I don't really, I've only done one of the music boat tours. I know it's super fun.
ZITO shaking his head. So have you done a cruise?
Do you know more about it?
I have done 9 music cruises, and 5 of them were with boy bands. And so I would imagine working on a cruise line that's not a music cruise would be a totally different scenario and could be fun.
Fantastic. Sorry about that, but as mentioned at the start of this, whatever. Facebook is
probably
Facebook.
Just wrapping up though. That's probably the most important thing about mixing. What I just said there.
I do appreciate
that. Yeah.
So that's the secret to everything.
Is the secret. Yep.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, sorry everybody for the whole Facebook Live hiccup there. What were we actually covering there when we got cut off?
Cruise ships.
Cruise ships, that's right. And then ZITO, you said you had done more than your fair share, and you were making some comment about wondering how long it would take yourself to swim to shore.
Actually, when I did the first New Kids cruise that I did, one of the things about being on a cruise ship that everybody loves is always the food, right? There's all these food options, whatever. And I love breakfast. And I think that the perfect food, vegans cover your ears, is bacon. I mean, if there is one perfect thing, it's bacon.
Absolutely.
Bacon is delicious. And I remember on the second day of the New Kids cruise, they ran out of bacon.
Oh.
The girls ate all the bacon, and they said, this is normally enough for 3 weeks. I'm going to leave it right there. To your own conclusions.
The cruise I did ran out of Jaeger. I'll tell you what kind of cruise it was.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. So good. Let's see here. Okay, so Dustin Muncie asked a good question. He was asking for front of house and PM, how do you establish volume limits with opening acts? So this is a question that we actually were talking about beforehand, but loud mixing powerful, volume limits, how do you guys go about not only working and setting limits for yourself when you're mixing or if you're production managing, but how do you work with the openers to set those limits and enforce them? Who wants to grab that one first? Chad?
Yeah, sure. First, speaking for myself, I set my own limits. I have a smart system, and I monitor myself. I try to keep my mix, depending on the artist, generally in the 101-ish kind of range. Not on an LEQ, just on a straight up. On an LEQ, it'd probably be more like 98 or 99 on like a 15-minute LEQ. As for the support bands, I do my best not to limit them in any sense other than I want people still to be able to hear at the end of the night. I usually request that, hey, come out, take a look at my show, see what I'm mixing at. If you go a dB or so over, you can go 100 dB over. I'm not going to get mad, but out of respect, I ask that you stay kind of in the same limits I am. The way I look at it is if you're better at my job than I am, you should probably have my job. So I don't want to limit somebody just to make myself seem better. I do it purely for safety reasons.
So, everybody's Apple Watch is still going off, though, with your mix.
Oh, God, yeah.
So, Fantastic. ZITO, what about you? Any experience there?
I kind of have two different thoughts on it. If it is a seated show where people are free to come and go as they want, I tend to not care as much about it. And my personal opinion is if they feel the need to, it settles down pretty quick if they start having such horrible sound that people leave. And if you're especially a support artist on the tour, and people are coming in and have maybe never heard of you before, if it sounds terrible, they're just going to get up and go to the concourse to grab another beer. They're not going to stick around and suffer through terrible audio or their ears bleeding. Not for the support act. So if they feel it's so important to be loud or to mix shitty and drive people out of the room, then that's their prerogative. But if that's a GA show where people have come in to watch the artist that I'm working for, and everybody's come in early to get the best seat, and they're going to be staying there through the entire support act so that they can have the best seat for the artist that I'm working for, then I'm definitely going to be on them about maintaining appropriate levels similar to our show. I don't care that it's louder. I just want it to be respectful. And especially in situations where there's places that have restrictions on it, where there's maybe LEQ averages or something like that, I want them to be respectful of that too. And I don't want to drive people out of the room. At that point, it's a respect thing for the headliner and making sure that everybody's having an enjoyable experience from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, exactly.
And the same thing if I'm mixing for a support artist.
Yep.
I 100% take the same approach, trying to present my artist the best way I can and be respectful of the headliner, knowing that these people are here and many of them to see the headliner, not the artist that I'm working for specifically. So I definitely take that approach of respect.
Awesome. Dustin Muncie, as a touring professional, what personal gear do you feel you need to carry yourself versus what do you spec from the providers? ZITO, obviously, we know DBX2 66XLs, but
absolutely
other than that, what do you? Is there anything that you carry personally, or is it just all up to the provider when you're doing that?
Well, I've always said if there's something that's so integral to your show that you have to have, that you can't do it without, you got to bring it. Mostly I rely on the provider these days, but I've been lucky enough, over the course of my career to be able to work with artists that have the budget to be able to do that. I've definitely carried boutique microphones, things that were very specific to my sound. I always loved a certain combination of guitar mics, and so I always carried them. And if I had a one-off or something with a new artist, I always kind of had the setup with me. And so that would be kind of it. It's probably a couple of very choice mics that may be harder to get on a local scenario, but otherwise I personally try to get everything provided. Now that I'm not necessarily mixing, and as I've seen from Kyle's posts, everything ends up becoming useless to me. I have a lot of things to sell and to get rid of that I'm paying to store right now that I wish I didn't own at this point, and I would love to just get rid of it.
Chad, we were having that conversation when we just started this call. Everybody was talking about the stuff they were selling and need to sell but weren't getting around to it. What about you? What's your take on this question?
So I've run the gamut. When I first started touring, I literally bought everything. I had Evantides, I had DBXs, I might have had the same compressors at one point. I had 2 full racks, and I brought a separate little. I can't remember if it was Allen and Heath or Soundcraft, a little Soundcraft 12-channel rack-mountable mixer that I would sub all of my effects into. And then because you're a support band, you may only get 12 channels, So, but I had to have that Eventide, so I couldn't chew up all the channels with that. So I had that, and I had, for a little bit I was endorsed by a microphone manufacturer, so I brought all my own mics. And then it slowly morphed, and I started working for artists who could, I charged for that stuff. It wasn't like I was giving it away for free, but I wasn't charging the same rate an audio vendor would charge. And then I started working for artists who could afford stuff, and I sold all that stuff about, maybe 8 or 10 years ago. I mean, even more than that, 10 or 12 years ago. Sold all that stuff. Now I've just got a few microphones, but now I'm starting to tip the scale the other way again. And I have a rack of just digital, waves and UAD that I carry with me. And waves, I can luckily get that kind of anywhere. But UAD, the way they do their licensing, you kind of have to have your own stuff with you. So, so I'm tipping back that way just a hair.
All right. Very good. Graham Tobias asks, ZITO, I've heard you speak in the past about making sure everyone is well informed and in the know on site. For both you, for ZITO and Chad, how do you deal with gatekeepers and people who hoard important information?
I fucking hate it.
Yeah, it's pointless. The whole macho attitude, hoarders of information come from people that are insecure. That's not how I operate. Unfortunately, I think that stuff always comes to bite people in the ass. I see no harm in sharing information so everybody knows what's going on. I have a Dropbox that all my crew chiefs have access to with all my files, minus financials, but anything they could see what's going on, so that, it's even more important now where you have the audio guys want to be able to see the seating chart so that they know what they're doing for coverage, and they're going to do their stuff in advance. And your electrician wants to go and look over the services of the venue so he knows what he's walking into in the tech pack, from the tech packet. So for me, it's about presenting everything so that people can know what's going on. I'm a huge advocate of Master Tour, and I put everything in there.
Same here.
Schedules, hotels, everything, so that people know what's going on. I don't want to be the gatekeeper. I never understood that whole hoarding thing. I hate people coming to ask me stupid questions, so it's self-serving. And the first thing I'll say is, did you look at Master Tour and did you check the Dropbox? That's where I store it. If I have the answer to the question, it's there. And I know that I have the answer to the question because it's in the information. And so I try to train everybody to go there first and eliminate just that stuff, the time-consuming questions that people can answer on their own.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And I've worked for a couple artists. Really just one artist who the tour manager forbid me to use Master Tour for the tour, which was an interesting turn. To be forbidden from using. I was like, well, all right, well, I won't give the information to the crew, but I'm still using it because that's how I do my job. That's how I do my advanced work, and that's where I put all my information, so it's in one place for me.
How did his investment go in the other company then?
I'm not sure.
Snap! Matt coming in hot there. Wow.
That particular person, I don't believe used any form of those type of services.
Okay. Yep.
But yeah, no, I'm with ZITO on this. Everybody needs to have all the information. I'd rather be accused of giving people too much information than not enough.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, I have had people say, I send out a daily email to my crew called Crew News, and I put everything about the next day in there, what we're walking into, what the load-in looks like, what the power is, lots of stuff. And it is funny to me that people will be like, there's so much stuff in here. I don't have time to read this. I'm like, well, then be ignorant and uninformed, right? Delete the email. You don't have to know what's going on. If you don't want to know what's coming up tomorrow and you want to walk in and look like a dumbass because you didn't read where I lay out to everybody exactly what we're walking into, then fine, be that way. But I don't get that mentality at all. It's old school and it's ignorant.
So good. Let's see here. We only have time for a couple more questions, so we're going to wrap up. I thought this one was really good, though. It's from Harrison Goldstein. And obviously, you guys have both been doing this for a couple of decades now. But he asked, what advice can you offer to someone who has no experience and who wants to get into this field? Obviously, front of house and production managing is a little bit different between those two. But can you maybe approach them one at a time? What advice would you give for somebody that wants to get into front of house mixing and somebody that wants to get into production managing?
Don't.
Chad.
Run far away. I think you just kind of have to go do it. Start with whatever you can get, a local band, a local club, your buddy who does a solo acoustic night at the local beach bar. And you kind of have to work your way up. Unfortunately, fortunately, there's really no shortcuts. I mean, you can go to school. There's several good schools and programs that'll get you a leg up. But at the end of the day, you have to put in the hours, and that's really, for me, what it comes down to.
Okay. ZITO?
Yeah, I think I'll I'm an open book, so I love to share and I love to mentor. But I would say that do what you can. Read. I've learned watching videos. There's so much information out there. Check on the forums. Be courteous. Be polite. Make friends. Take on mentors. Be willing to do anything. Volunteer to jump in and help with a load in. Somebody asks like, "Hey, I need some help unloading a truck this weekend." Be willing to jump in. We notice that stuff. Guys like Chad and I that hire the crew notice that thing. Those people that are eager to work, ask the right questions. I don't need the best, most experienced person. I need somebody that wants to work hard, wants to learn, and wants to improve. And that's how I approach daily myself. And so I look for that in other individuals. I think if you take that, it all starts with your attitude and your mindset. If you think you're above something, you probably won't work.
Yeah, and I'll add, as much as a lot of us production managers will tell someone that's a dumbass question, there really are no dumbass questions.
Just dumb people. Oh, sorry.
There are some of those.
There are. Hey, with that thought, ZITO and Chad, can you talk a little bit about mentorship? Who was your best mentor? Who mentored you growing up, both in the audio as well as as a production manager?
I think that I'm constantly learning, and I'm always learning from my team. So I have a lot of people that I would consider mentors. In the production side, Omar is a huge mentor to me. I think he's extremely talented and gracious, and I think that, again, those people are willing to share and teach, and as long as you're being respectful of them, that's my approach. And I glean lots of stuff from other engineers. Raybold is a good friend, and I learned a lot from him. Pooch is a good friend. I've learned a lot from him. And I think, again, those folks, you run into them at festivals, you see them at shows, you can bounce stuff off of them. And as long as you're respectful of them and respectful of their time, I continually learn. I want to continually learn. And so I always put myself in the mindset of a student, and even from my rigger. I can hire somebody on a tour and learn from them. I surround myself with the best people I can, and I'm not threatened by bringing somebody in that's I've been 21 years in touring, but maybe they've been in for 40.
But maybe they've been in for 2 and still know something more than you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm much like ZITO. I'm the same. I love helping. I say younger people out, but it doesn't have to be younger. Just people that aren't necessarily, doing it full time or whatever. Mentoring people, it can be a lot of fun. And I think, same as ZITO said, you got to go out and you got to ask, you got to learn and do things. I got to watch. I'm a graduate of like 4 Ozfest tours, so I got to watch, Opie and Charlie Hernandez and Ian Kinnersley and all these guys for many, many summers, and watch how they do their jobs. So I got to, none of them sat me down and really said, "Hey, do things this way," but I got to watch them and learn from watching them. And on the audio side, I did a lot of tours early in my career with Andy Meyer, who is one of the best out there right now. Or for a while now, and same with Paul Hager. I've done a bunch of stuff with Paul Hager. Paul Hager and I go back, 30 something years, I think. Wow. Yeah, actually no longer than that. I think I met Paul in 91. So we go back a little ways.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. So I know we got to wrap up here pretty soon, but I wanted to end with one totally self-serving question. Dennis Satria thankfully asked, what's your favorite feature in DiGiCo except for the save session button? So you guys want a second to think about that, or does something come to mind? You guys obviously talked about liking the workflow, liking the flexibility of things, but is there one feature that you really like?
For me, I love the macros. I utilize the hell out of them, and I mean, to the point where I even have a macro for turning the lights up and down on the console, pre-show, during sound check, and then show mode. For me, between that and then the dynamic EQ is another huge key feature for me.
Awesome. ZITO, I think
Mike
you're
is
muted.
muted.
You're muted, ZITO.
Man, that was so brilliant. It was eloquent. Yeah, man. Yeah, good job, ZITO. Yeah. Dynamic EQ, 100%. For me, that having dynamic EQ on every channel, I find out I EQ a whole lot less. I do a whole lot less with the compression when I have that as a tool. So that for me is the biggest thing. And of course, macros are brilliant. They hurt my head sometimes because you can do so much with them. And pretty much every person on the screen and in this chat has has helped me through my macro programming. Kyle, you're in the background, but I've done many calls to ask you how to do something. And thank you for the great support.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, as we get to wrap it up, ZITO, it was brought up a couple of times today, but please do tell us about Z Bakery.
Yeah. The bakery. I'm sorry, anybody that's French. Please don't hate me. I know that was horrible. The short version is myself, like everybody else. I'm unemployed right now. I have no source of income and no tours on the horizon. I was supposed to work from March 1st to December 31st, literally 3 tours that went right into each other, and they're all gone, as it is for everybody. With the time that I have, I had been baking for myself and my wife, and then riding my bike to work off the calories, and started selling some of the goods in the neighborhood. And one thing led to another, and I started selling these sourdough cinnamon rolls that I make. And they became popular. One week we sold a dozen, then the next week we sold 20, and then it was 60, and then 80, and now we have over 200 orders this weekend alone. So it's something that I've realized can support myself and my wife, help pay our bills, pay our mortgage. And also one of the things we're really excited about with Z Bakery is we're donating money from every cinnamon roll that we sell to Music Cares. And so we want to be able to give back to the touring community that's feeling this right now. So they're helping a lot of folks. I know a lot of individuals that have had funds put in their pocket to help them pay their bills during this time, and I think they're doing great work. So you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at the Z Bakery Nashville. If you're in the Nashville area, Saturdays and Sundays are pickup days. You can check out the Instagram and Facebook for more information. Thanks for letting me plug it.
Absolutely.
Soon to come to mail delivery?
Soon to come to mail delivery. Chad, you're getting the first batch.
Sweet. If it sucks, I'll still eat it.
I could promise it won't suck, my friend. That much.
Unless it goes bad in shipment.
Fair enough. Okay.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Kyle, I think we have a couple of upcoming events this weekend. We have Jason Reynolds doing a Locked Up with DiGiCo special. That'll be tomorrow at 12 p.m. Central, U.S. So I think that is 6 p.m. British summertime, and that'll be a great one to check out as well. And then Clang is doing an interview with Jerry Harvey. I think that'll be fantastic. That is definitely something you're going to want to jump on and check out. That is going to be Thursday, June 4th at 11 a.m. Central U.S. as well. Chad, ZITO, thank you so much for taking the time out. I know there's obviously lots of baking and bike riding that could be done during this time. Chad, you had no excuse for not being able to join us for this, but thank you nonetheless. That's right. Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time out and spending it with us. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. And to thank you all for watching and contributing, asking questions. Kyle, Matz, thank you so much as well for helping with this one. We miss you, Dan Page, wherever you are. And we will see everybody next week. Sounds good.
Thanks, Ryan.
Guys. Have a great
Appreciate
day.
it, guys. Be good.
Thank you.